For months, those of us who have questioned the narrative on coronavirus have been sidelined as conspiracy theorists. And I don't think it's being at all paranoid to look at government honestly and say, this is nothing but a giant conspiracy to rip you off. And I wonder if most Americans, if most human beings kind of inherently know this, that there has to be a deeper narrative. There has to be some fundamental truth that's missing from the mainstream narrative. And with this YouTube channel, I guess today, not coming to you at all on YouTube, banned on YouTube. We should have the censored banners up for Adam Burge. There you go. Look at that. Banned on YouTube currently for, well, let's go directly to YouTube on this. If you go to my Twitter, I just did Hey YouTube, and I posted two pictures, and one was our email from YouTube, how your content violated the policy. YouTube doesn't allow content that explicitly disputes the efficacy of the World Health Organization or local health authorities' recommended guidance on social distancing and self-isolation that may lead people to act against that guidance. And I actually paired it with a nice little meme that someone had sent me in regard to this. It's not science if you're not allowed to question it. It's a belief system, a religion, a cult, but not science. And I still don't know where this is going. Our intrepid producer, CJ from South Dakota, likes to point out how much we have predicted correctly. But that's because I predict cautiously. And I analyze cautiously. I think it is irresponsible and reckless as a journalist. Sometimes we like to call them in the mainstream media prostitutes for their servile nature regarding government and their employers and authority in general, and being mouthpieces for the current system, as opposed to the traditional ideal of journalism. And I'd like to think that at some point, I mean, this tweet, hey, at YouTube, 124 retweets, 349 likes. YouTube is notoriously a black box for customer service relations for content creators. I used to be part of a production network, and they were sort of able to serve as a liaison. But I don't even know if YouTube's really the answer. You know, and I've said this before, and I hope that anybody who's listening to me right now understands what I mean when I say as independent media, we need an active and engaged audience to do what we do, to make it possible to have a production like this, to compete against the mainstream media, and to overcome, to whatever degree we can, the censorship. So the video last week was just called The Big Picture on Corona. And I pointed out that there was a study that says that masks worn for prolonged periods in a controlled study increases viral transmission. Ben Swan did a similar video, or a video, I should say, addressing the topic from a slightly different angle, and was also had that video, at least from, I don't know what his general status is with YouTube, but had that video removed. and this is one of the things we got from his channel. It was one of the things we got to interview him about, is that you have to be able to ask science the right questions. Skipping way ahead on the pile of news today, if you don't mind, CJ, to thehour.com. I got to tie this article in here. Trust in science wanes, another casualty of coronavirus pandemic. And this is a Washington Post story just from another website. And I think you know my take on this. It's not that trust in science is waning. It's that trust in authority and establishments of so-called science, who also, I don't know, do we have a way to combine a word for whore with scientist to describe what I'm talking about? People who create justification for government policy that serves the sponsors of government. Surprise, surprise. So just to read a little bit of this article, in another era, what happened Wednesday might have been viewed simply as good news. Two companies, Regeneron Pharmaceuticals and Eli Lilly, have independently developed therapeutic drugs called monoclonal antibodies that in preliminary testing appear to reduce symptoms. But they're saying there's a problem because President Donald Trump repeatedly making false and exaggerated claims about the new therapeutics. He called them a cure, which they're not. He said he was about to approve them, a premature promise given that the FDA's career scientists are charged with reviewing the applications. Politics has thoroughly contaminated the scientific process in 2020. The result has been an epidemic of distrust, which further undermines the nation's already chaotic and ineffective response to the novel coronavirus, which causes the illness COVID-19. The White House has repeatedly meddled with decisions by career professionals at the FDA, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and other science-based agencies. Now, I understand in a world where we expect so much, or the general paradigm expects so much to be funded by government, to have government-funded science, is not one of my biggest gripes about government or the status quo. But they call these science-based agencies. Part of the ideal of science is reason and logic and open questioning of reality, pushing humanity forward, deepening our understanding of ourselves and the universe around us. This is an obvious perversion of science, and I would like to think that, if anything, trust in science is at an all-time high because we have direct access to it like never before, to apply the methodology of rational analysis of the scientific method. And what that reveals to us is that the mainstream narrative on corona is, as the social justice warriors would say, problematic, full of holes. Or as W might have said, you see, it's circular logic. There's no holes in it. So the kicker to all of this, and I don't know, maybe I should have led with this. I mean, this is our top story today, by all accounts. And this is from a mainstream media source. Until you rarely do what we with Adam versus the Man source things outside of reputable mainstream media for the facts that we're looking at to analyze, or primary sources. And all the stuff that we've been banned for has been commentary on mainstream available data about corona. I'm not making shit up. I'm not, I cite my sources every damn day. And now this headline from the New Zealand Herald. This is it. This is the kicker. COVID-19 coronavirus. World Health Organization doctor backflips on virus lockdowns. Don't use them as a primary control. A World Health Organization doctor has backflipped on the organization's original COVID-19 stance, calling for world leaders to stop locking down their countries and economies as a primary control method. Dr. David Nabarro from the WHO appealed to world leaders yesterday, telling them to stop using lockdowns as your primary control method of the coronavirus. He also claimed that the only thing lockdowns achieved was poverty, with no mention of the potential lives saved. Quote, lockdowns just have one consequence that you must never, ever belittle, and that is making poor people an awful lot poorer. We in the World Health Organization do not advocate lockdowns as the primary means of control of this virus. The only time we believe a lockdown is justified is to buy you time to reorganize, regroup, rebalance your resources, protect your health workers who are exhausted, but by and large, we'd rather not do it. Now, making poor people an awful lot poorer. Speaking my language, I'd like to point out, as my regular listeners know, that the only true legitimate explanation of a purpose of government is to keep the super rich getting richer and the rest of us getting relatively poor. There, to look at these things and to deny that there's some conspiracy, and I'm not being esoteric at all. I'm describing what we know to be happening around us, what we see in the government's response to the coronavirus as a conspiracy of conspiracies. Clearly, people in the Chinese Communist Party conspired to manipulate the data. That wasn't one person operating by themselves. Clearly, the federal government working with state governments, working with local governments in the United States have conspired to create, to get people to accept a fundamentally illegal policy. Now, again, is Adam saying that this is illegal? No, this was a U.S. federal court reviewing policy in Pennsylvania. Lawsuit with the governor. And we've kind of just gone along with this. You really have to be a delusional coincidence theorist to say that, oh yes, when they just they didn't have the science to justify their policies and they were just guessing and then forced them on people. And I mean, we got more stories today about how they're still doing this all over the world. New York City having issued $150,000 in fines now. And those of us who point this out get silent or shadow banned or have videos taken off of YouTube. And I just hope that is some motivation, some inspiration. It gets to, why am I a libertarian? Because I'm an activist. I'm motivated by a deep-seated sense of injustice. I see people all over the world getting taken advantage of, ripped off, lives ruined, the wealth of generations siphoned away from humanity to the super class, many of whom as billionaires have seen insane increases in their wealth over the last 7 months. We've covered these stories. this is if all I'm doing is connecting the dots, why do we get silenced? If I was criticizing the efficacy of World Health Organization policy, and that's why I'm banned on YouTube right now, and then they just flip their policy. Well, maybe I guess I was just a week ahead of the World Health Organization on their own policy. Like I said, I don't know where this is going. I don't know. I remain confident in my overall faith in human progress. But whether the coronavirus, the coronaphobia, coronavirus epidemic takes us to a new normal of tyranny that's going to be with us for decades, a new template for taking a relatively normal recurring event within the global human family petri dish and blowing it up into this hoax. Yeah. I hope you see what I see, because it could be up to us. It could be up to us whether government gets to write the story of COVID, as they have rewritten it and rewritten it week after week after week after week. And with the mainstream media giving you this is what you have to be afraid of today, and forget what we said yesterday, because we need your attention now so we can sell you shit that you don't need, that you're going to buy with money that you don't have on credit. Like it's this the insane commercialism as well behind corporatism, of course, behind the mainstream media. Are we going to let them write the story of Corona? Are we going to let them erase this history? Or are we going to make sure that the world never forgets what we have just experienced? And today is Monday, October 12th, 2020. Thank you so much for joining us here on Adam versus the Man. Let's get Comment Jim Freedom up here. Bit of an extended rant this morning. And I'm sorry. I'm stumbling. I'm inarticulate this morning, trying to make this point myself, even because I feel like I've said it so many times. But I hope that kind of drives it home and gives people a sense of the imperative that, whether we get to tell the story or they get to tell the story might determine whether we come out of this with positive momentum and accelerate towards a free society, or we have some evil remnants of this racket with us for decades.
Hopefully the former.
I wish I could call it. Anyway, any good comments so far this morning, Jim?
Yeah, people are upset that they took you down on YouTube. Chad is my name. He just found out. He said, trust in science, the same commenter. Trust in science, in quotes, is not how science works. Science is born of skepticism, harsh testing of theory.
Yeah.
Good point, I thought. You shouldn't have trust just in science. You should have trust in the process, in the scientific process or the scientific method, but not just in science itself.
Yeah, and with that, I actually want to say, if I may, Jim, because some people would expect me to have a problem with this, and maybe I haven't analyzed it thoroughly enough, but I don't really have a problem with YouTube or Facebook tagging, everything related to COVID with their authoritative data source, so that they get to have that weight against, that they tag stuff with that. But the silencing, there's just no excuse for that. I don't know. Do you think it's okay for that? I mean, it's sort of like, yeah, it's a private platform, and I haven't made the case in all of this that, this is censorship in a governmental or coercive sense. obviously major corporation Alphabet owning Google, owning YouTube, there's definitely going to be some corruption there. But I've said it's a fraud, and what they've done is taken government monopoly advantage or corporatocracy advantage, and used it to manipulate the conversation in a very dangerous way. Anyway, sorry. Hey, what else we got for comments this morning, Jim?
You're right. What's that?
We got a contest?
Oh, no, I don't think we came up with a contest for today. Chris Statham points out, just to let you know, Facebook blocked me from clicking on your notification for this video. I must have had to do some extra work just to get to watch in the first place. And they'll blame it on glitches and bullshit, but
Yeah, I did a whole year like completely disengaged from Facebook, where all we said was like I posted once a week. I'm sort of boycotting Facebook. Didn't help engagement there, but you look at the numbers, like when I went live, when I went live on just Facebook for Cigars and Sunsets a couple weeks ago, and it's like I got 25,000 followers, 4,000 something friends. I go live and get like 10 viewers. That's a little weird. That's a little weird, Facebook. But it's funny. Like I don't even, this thing with YouTube, the actual censorship. I've experienced that on Facebook too. But this is, I guess I've just kind of bashing Facebook has gotten so passe.
yeah.
Like I just assume that I think we just come to assume that Facebook is highly manipulated, but you expect still, YouTube to at least be honest in how it treats creators and in putting the channels that you subscribe to in your feed.
You would think. I'm a statist. It was nice to meet him on Saturday after the Jorgensen rally.
Yes. That was great.
He chimes in.
Denny's afterwards.
He chimes in and says, most everything I've seen should be covered under the fair use doctrine, which I agree with, because we're just giving analysis and opinion on sourced links. That's all we ever do.
I guess I left this out of my opener today, but one of the things that's been screwy about the YouTube censorship is the usual lack of information or understanding or just explanation of what exactly. Sometimes at one point they were giving people timestamps like this. I think that was just for copyright violations.
Copyright, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what Mr. Statist is referring to here. But the internet represents the ultimate. I'm trying. What's the right metaphor? Nail in the coffin for the intellectual property racket. It's just a matter of time. And I saw this coming from the beginning. The book Freedom, which we have not been promoting because the website is only recently back up, but thefreedomline.com, get it for free. And there's a section in here about intellectual property fundamentally being a racket as a coercive government policy. But yeah, if that's the game we got to play for now, but like that, they never hit us on that, and what they said in that email, being that direct about it, that's unusually specific, actually. And I don't know. Maybe we should take this to chance to get CJ up here. Did you file an appeal already for that one, or not yet?
I filed an initial statement. There was one spot here, and then there's more spots. There's one for the clip, and there's one for the full show.
Right, but at that point, they didn't tell us what it was, right?
No, you had posted what it was.
Okay, so at that point you knew because I
But there's
found the email.
there's two conflicting reasons here. Again, from YouTube. It's they first said spams and deceptive practices and scams, and then they sent you an email saying it's this WHO thing. So what is it, YouTube? Like, what is it? I mean, do I got to get my YouTube shirt on? I mean, which boxes am I not checking right? One of the things that on my end of the clips is that I have to check the boxes for YouTube. And they tell me that I have to check it if you say the word fuck. Well, guess what? I'm going to have to check a box. Okay. If we say the words coronavirus, for a long time, YouTube had us check a box that if we even hinted at the word coronavirus, we had to check a box or we wouldn't be suitable for advertising. And then that was because they wanted to put COVID-19 warnings on every COVID-related video so you can all funnel into the WHO. And now the WHO's doing the backflipping and YouTube is sitting here censoring. And I mean, what do you really want to say about it? Yeah, like, can we have some freedom? Can we not be censored?
I don't know. I'm still processing everything.
Yeah.
But I just take this as more motivation. You know,
Of course, yeah, for sure.
You know, in terms of that we get to play a role in determining what is the impact of this going to be over the next decade. Could this be a positive period of awakening for humanity?
Oh God, no! I see. This is where I lose all hope and faith in humanity. I think that the YouTube would, if YouTube found out the world was going to end tomorrow, it would censor it. Yeah. Hey, but real quick, while I'm on screen, I'm gonna at least lighten the mood a little bit. I did get a sample one of the JSK Nugs.
Hell yeah!
So I would like to remind everybody to go to Cigar Federation and get yourself one of these. I'm gonna try this with you at the next cigars and the Cigar and Sunsets. And I've never tried a cigar really, honestly. So I'm really excited to do that. So
nice. Well,
maybe you have to cut a hole in the end of it, right?
I have no idea. I'm gonna learn on. Maybe Adam can show me how to do it on Friday. You know, maybe we can take the time to prep it and be like, for the new guys out there that have never done this before.
All right, so maybe we should test this in advance. But I think there's a way to have you just join me on Periscope, right?
I don't know. I don't know if I want to be out there puffing on my first one, dying in front of everybody. I'd rather just do that one in private with you.
All right.
Anyways,
any other producer notes this morning?
Well, I feel like I'm gonna miss something. But please do go to our store, AdamVersusTheMan.com. There is a promo code in the Producers Club chat. So if you're in the Producers Club chat, there's a promo code for you to use for being a patron. And so I know Nick just got the tie-dye shirt. Like I said, I'm wearing the Adam versus the Man shirt. Got this really nice hat here. I'm excited because I got the Freedom hat coming too, and a jacket, and the beanbag chair is officially shipping. So that's exciting to see what the Adam versus the Man beanbag chair is going to look like. You know, I mean, it's got all the fun on it. So, and
hopefully
even
less like truck nuts than it does on the screen.
Yeah, even has a picture, greetings from Gardenia in there. Like it's I mean, it's got all of them. So, and then if you've been paying attention to the show, in the chats of some of the videos, I've thrown out just a general use store code that if you're only a active and engaged audience member who's maybe not a patron or a part of the Producers Club, we still want to reward you for your attention. So there is a promo code somewhere in the Adam versus the Man universe for you as well. So,
right.
Other than that, that's all I got for producer notes.
Well, one more promo we got to cover. Why don't you throw out makethemdebate.com? Really excited that we got Mercedes as our debate manager.
How could I forget makethemdebate.com?
Yeah, and I'm actually surprised. I'm surprised we don't have another one right now gaining momentum. I don't know if maybe that should be our contest today. Either even if not, I'd love to see more suggestions from the audience that we can send to Mercedes to create these debate challenges that you can fund. And the first one so far, big success, and it was just because anonymous dude on Tyos from Twitter said, I would like to see Adam Kokesh debate Dario Rahim on does the state have a right to tax? Dario describes himself as a left libertarian. To me, sort of a predictable debate, except that my kittens were invaded the studio during the debate, so that made it really interesting. But it was a great conversation. It was a lot of fun. The payout worked, so the system functions. So you can at least it seems like you can trust them, and I hope we can make another one of these happen soon. So let us know in the comments during the show today if you have a debate you want to see with me or with I don't know, or for me to moderate between two other people. Happy to take all sorts of suggestions like that. So, Jim, one other thing we got to cover before we get to our next headlines, that you and I got to go to the Joe Jorgensen rally in Scottsdale this weekend. And, interesting scene, a lot of fun, great turnout for Phoenix at this point for an event in the middle of coronaphobia. Certainly a lot better attended than most Biden events. Low standard there, but a scale less than Trump rallies, even in their diminished scale. What did you think?
I enjoyed it. Everything was good. I had it running live on my Facebook channel for anybody that wants to see what was said. I'm sure there's probably better quality videos posted of it, but yeah, it was a good turnout. Yep. Oh, there it is right there behind my tripod.
Nice. There it is. CJ, hot on it.
Somebody asked in the comments, they said, why aren't people closer to the stage with Joe? I said, I think that when it started, the shade dictated where people sat. Because you can see there's a lot of people to the left over there by the tree. There's a couple spots in the video, CJ, if you find it, where I did turn around the camera to look behind me and show the crowd, I actually took a little bit of drone footage at first, too. But I hesitated when Joe came on. I don't know. What do you think about this? Because I was having an internal conflict with myself. I had my drone, but when I fly my drone to get close enough to get some really good shots, you can hear it. So I didn't want to be bothering the crowd trying to listen to Joe's message, running around, buzzing around them. What do you think about that? You think anybody would have cared with a little drone noise flying above, or do you think it would have?
Well, it's an outdoor rally that it wouldn't have blocked anybody from hearing speakers unless you were right over their heads for just a second, maybe. I mean, I would have done a pass, but ask the campaign team, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess I could have asked the campaign team. Yeah.
It's more that I mean, I think people would go, "Hey, we're on camera."
Well, they did at first because I did run a few passes, but that was before Joe started talking. They were just running music, so I just ran a few passes over the crowd just to get the the scene or whatnot. So I got some cool shots that I'll be uploading today, probably.
Yeah, the thing the one thing that like that made me uncomfortable about it, and I hate to point out this negative, but it's not about Joe or the party or the campaign or the message or anything. But that to host an event as a libertarian presidential candidate or the libertarian presidential candidate in 2020, you kind of have to accommodate people who want a distance and err on the side of, wiping down the microphone and 6 foot distancing, but they weren't strict about it. It was sort of like it was this weird middle ground. I mean, did you got a sense of that? I mean, it seemed like what
Yeah, yeah.
about half the crowd was wearing masks.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know if I could put a number on it, but I guess half is a good guess because there was a significant amount of people wearing them, so a significant amount of people not. So, and it was real. But
Yeah,
even the people that were wearing them seemed like they were like that. Like everybody that was waiting in line to talk, there were people with masks, without masks, without masks. But nobody was like, nobody was 6 feet away in the line. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
they were all just kind of like you could have made the choice to wait 6 feet behind the person in front of you, but nobody made that choice. Everybody was just like, yeah, let's just wait in the line like we always have since forever. And, when it's our turn, it's our turn. Nobody was worried about it. I got that feeling anyway.
Well, one of the cool things about this that I just realized is that there was no policy.
Well, they
The
did have
campaign.
some of the campaign, yeah, people going around just saying uh, to be courteous, basically, or whatever.
Okay, I missed that, but the campaign team had their own policy, and yeah, in order to be welcoming of people, you want to be able to welcome people without challenging them on that, you know. And I mean, this is part of this is a good thing. Like I've said about me being a bit of a germaphobe, right? That there is now a higher standard of just courtesy in cough into your elbow, don't be a close talker, try not to spit in other people's faces, that if stay home if you're sick, wash your hands, shit that I'm like, yeah, we should have been doing this the whole time. Like
It's always been like that, hasn't it?
like get on my level, and that there's a little more hygiene consciousness in that way. Like that's a good thing. Yeah, so but it was cool that it was an outdoor event, and it was this public space, and that's the way the public space is now. And they set up a stage, and people who didn't I I didn't notice, was there an expectation? People were getting pictures with Joe afterwards, right? I mean, and on stage.
Well, that
There,
was
there,
one thing. I On stage there was a couple of pictures. I felt like she left. Maybe it was just me, but she was gone pretty quickly after the event was over. So there wasn't really any mingling of handshakes and stuff like that.
yeah, that is a little weird to think like you have to go, well, I guess if I'm going to be a candidate right now, I'm just gonna risk it and risk being a super spreader. Like that's such a weird, like, and it's so petty, and it sucks that you even have to think about it, because you wouldn't think about being a super spreader in a bad flu season, right?
Right.
But now it's become this. It has come to so dominate the whole global human consciousness right now. It's just like I've been saying, a dark cloud over everything.
Status is pointing out that the organizers were very strongly suggesting that the organizers very strongly suggested the mask so we didn't get shut down by the cops. That's what someone told him, I guess. Nobody told me that, but I was like when I showed up with Helen and Peter, and we all were walking into the park off the sidewalk out of the parking lot, and somebody, I don't know if he was with the campaign specifically, I assume he was. Yeah, well, yeah, he was because he had a volunteer shirt on. And he started saying something about I didn't barely even listen because it said something about 6 feet or something like that. And Helen and Peter stopped, and I just kept walking. And so I'm not sure exactly what he said.
Well, there
Sort of.
definitely was no significant effort to control the public
Right.
space or enforce anything. But yeah, that too. It's when you're the Libertarian nominee for president and her team, you got to go, well, we're going to be in a different city every day. Let's just try not to get arrested or fined or shut down by the cops or something, because that, like, they're doing that. That's happening. That's a thing. And you have to say, well, we're going to put the message overall and the responsibility of the nomination first. Anyway, any other comments, or should we get into some headlines?
Well, CJ pointed out that we did forget to advertise the Patreon, the where people can easily get access to our producers club. So CJ, if you want to throw that up, we can get that advertisement out of the way, and then you can go to your news right afterwards. There's our Patreon, $1, $5, $10 a month. $10 is really where it's at. That gets you access to the Producers Club, which is 24/7 access to a group chat with Adam, myself, CJ, Marcus, Mercedes. Everybody's in there. There's like 25, 26 people in there. It's a good time. So join that, $10 a month, and we'll see you there.
And they're the main. Well, we actually have two groups now. We have bifurcated
the Producers Anonymous.
Club. Yeah, we got a Bullshitters Anonymous channel, so people can feel free to just throw tons of stuff there, and then we have the main Producers Club chat that we want to keep more focused on the production and prepping for the show. And a lot of the links we have today are because people sent us links there, and this is my my awesome volunteer editorial team. Now, you can give us $10 a month and not join us on Telegram. That's totally fine too. But if you want to be a part of this, it's you know, and we have contests a few times a week, and you know, you can win your way in if you want to be cheap about it, and you just want to contribute to the show editorially and share links. You know, there are other ways in. We want to encourage participation. All right, so let's just jump right into it. I'll be checking back in with y'all for comments periodically throughout the show today. We do not have a guest, in case you didn't notice. So taking our time today. Got a big pile of news, some deep stuff, some shallow stuff, some fun stuff, some nasty stuff. Starting from the Jerusalem Post, Trump less trusted across advanced economies than China's President Xi. The U.S. was also perceived as handling the COVID crisis worse than China has. Now, remember, we brought you the story from Tablet Mag a couple weeks ago, telling the narrative, the overall story of China's manipulation of the data and the global perception of their policies and the lockdown. And in the United States, as privileged citizens of the empire, we live in a kind of media and awareness bubble where the rest of the world is probably a lot more aware of China's direct influences than we are here. And there is a certain conditioning of the American people to be less worldly and less tuned into these things. Obviously, there's a nationalism creates isolation, as Doug Stanhope described it, making you take credit for things you didn't have any part in and hating people who you've never met, right? That they need that, you know, in national identity and a lower opinion of the others, the outsiders, in order to make war possible. Now, we might be past that, historically speaking, and I think for the most part we are, because of the globally connected nature of the world with the internet today. So to the story, negative perceptions of China have soared over the past year across many advanced economies, reaching all-time highs in a number of countries, including the UK, Germany, and Australia, a Pew Research Center poll published last week has found. While the increasingly unfavorable view of China is driven in large part by belief that the country did not handle the coronavirus pandemic well, America came off even worse. The survey was taken in 14 countries between June 10 and August 3, blah, 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 quizzed on whether they held a positive or negative view of China, how well they thought China had done on handling the pandemic, and whether they had confidence in Chinese President Xi Jinping to do the right thing regarding world affairs. A majority in every country held negative views on China, ranging from 86% of those in Japan and 85% in Switzerland holding this view to 62% in Italy saying the same. The Spanish held similar views to their Mediterranean cousins, as 63% of Spaniards held a negative view. I guess, or the Swiss and the Japanese just haters? No, but so there's a bigger problem with this, obviously, in when you say, what is your opinion of China? if you just say China, are you talking about the country as a whole, the land, the people, the government, the institutions, that which makes it China on a map, the government's claim to territory? So there's that conflating factor needs to be taken out of here, but you can still see that this is I think, a really positive development, just as a measure of how much more aware people are in the age of the internet. And you think about the Chinese persecution of the Uyghurs, the Muslim population in China. It's just a horrendous human rights violation. What they're doing in those populations, forced vaccinations, detentions, forced re-education, disappearing people. It really is crazy, what is behind this. But going to the Xi specifically, nevertheless, Xi was not the least popular world leader. In most countries surveyed, the people had more faith in the Chinese leader than they did in America's President Donald Trump. For example, 78% of Germans had no confidence in the Chinese premier, while 89% said the same of Trump. I'd like to think that when people are responding to a survey like this, especially given the political nature of the questions, we say, do you have a positive or negative view of America? People are thinking the government. They're not thinking those of us who are victims of it, trying to do our best to stop it. But think of how low this is. 89% of Germans said they had no confidence in Donald Trump. Some would say, well, that's because Trump's just so bad. I think there's a more, maybe, in terms of policy, people have tried to convince libertarians that Trump is libertarian. The most libertarian president we've ever had, and in the sense that government gets less vicious over time despite growing as it is continuing with Trump. That Donald Trump does not represent a bucking of that trend of making government suddenly more vicious or disastrous. No new major wars. Although and honestly, with the coronavirus, I don't think Trump was really driving the train at that point. I really think he got suckered into it as a matter of policy. In his initial position of, it's just a kind of a bad flu. So anyway, back to the story. Overall, on average across the nation, surveyed 83% of respondents had no confidence in Trump, 78 no confidence in Xi, and 73 no confidence in Russia's Putin. By contrast, a majority, 76%, did have confidence in Germany's Chancellor Angela Merkel, and 62% had a favorable opinion of France's President Emmanuel Macron. Britain's Prime Minister Boris Johnson was more divisive. 48% said they did have confidence in him, against 46% who said they did not. Interesting survey of world opinion. Now, back to the American presidential election. From Bloomberg via MSN.com, talked up as spoiler, Kanye West's 2020 bid draws mostly shrugs. And we covered this when it first came out, and I was like, yeah, this could be Trump's ace up his sleeve, right? And as being cautious, like in predictions, there are a lot of people who have already called this election for Biden. And you know what? I might feel a little bit silly if Biden wins by as much as the polls say that he's going to. If he wins by some landslide, and I didn't have the courage of my analysis to call it, then I might feel a little bit silly. But they're engineered. Your presidential elections are engineered in the duopoly to be neck and neck. They want you to feel beholden to the duopoly, to the two-party system, and feel like you're convinced of one being the lesser evil. And so you better not throw your vote away for a libertarian. And, you know, enough people at this point, I think, know better that, you know, voting for a duopoly candidate is throwing your vote away. But there's this Trump saying he's got corona and cured and might be immune, and getting to do his little staging re-entry to the White House, coming back from Walter Reed and saying, oh, we want to debate, and being that tough guy coming out of this. You know, and I said this when we saw the story last week that Trump tested positive for corona, that he could have hid that if he wanted to, which means that he could have fabricated it if he didn't get corona, which means that he wants this to happen this way. At least that's what it looks like. And he might have some survey data that I don't. He's got access to way better polling than I do. Maybe there have been enough secret polls. If Trump got corona, would you be more or less likely to vote for him? If Biden was avoiding the debates, but Trump was saying, we're going to go regardless, you know, we want to debate, would you be more likely to vote for Trump? Maybe all of these factors Donald Trump is combining at the last minute to pull out a victory, as he did in 2016, surprising everybody. So Kanye West, the idea is that Kanye runs for president secretly, or unbeknownst to him, perhaps, who knows, as unstable and possibly politically naive as he may be, he may have been tricked into doing this, but to help Donald Trump by taking votes from Biden. So the story trying to dismiss this, you know, from MSN, Bloomberg, rather, I wonder if there's there's an editorial motivation here. You know, don't pay any attention to Kanye. He's not a serious candidate. Don't vote for Kanye. The thing is, if Kanye or Trump, if they're able to dump a few $1 million, I mean, Kanye doesn't even have to. Neither does Trump. They both have such a powerful presence and ability to interject their narrative in the national conversation, that if they decide to make Kanye's candidacy a thing at the last minute, a lot more people are going to hear Kanye and Trump than Mark Niquette writing for Bloomberg. So now, despite his global star power, West is looking more like a blip in the race than a spoiler weeks before the November 3rd election. West was never seen as a serious contender, aided by Republican operatives. He got on the ballot in just a dozen states, not enough to compete in the Electoral College. The African-American celebrity may draw some votes from Biden, who enjoys overwhelming support from black voters, but his impact looks to be limited. Only 3 of the states where his name is listed, Minnesota, Iowa, and Colorado, are considered competitive between Biden and President Donald Trump. And I'm like, he could throw 3 states? Hypothetically, Kanye's like right now in a position to throw Minnesota, Iowa, and Colorado to Trump? Like that's pretty significant. And so this, the article goes into the analysis of 2016 in Michigan, for example. Stein with the Green Party won a combined 223,599 votes in 2016 in a state. Trump carried over Democrat Hillary Clinton by just 10,704 votes. So they're trying to, give you the spoiler narrative, point out that Kanye is selling campaign apparel on his website, tweeted a video holding Vote Kanye 2020 Vision hats. So he's making money from this. And the campaign has reportedly spent $5.9 million, including $4.1 million to get on the state ballots. So, I mean, this is not insignificant. I would not be surprised if this is the last minute ace up Trump's sleeve that at like a week before election day, they're going to come out and enough people are going to go, oh, I'm voting for I'm voting for Kanye because it doesn't matter, Biden's going to win anyway. And we covered it. By the way, another story we didn't cover, but we were going to. Is it like I'm not. I'm not actually being that creative in like if you think, Adam, your prediction here is far out. If you say they're gonna, how are they gonna trick Biden voters into voting for Kanye, aside from just getting their attention with Kanye and making it look like a protest vote? But I think they're actually capable of tricking a critical number of Democrat voters into believing that their vote doesn't matter. They might as well vote Kanye as a protest because Biden's going to win anyway, or Biden's going to carry their state. The story that I didn't cover from last week was that a couple of Republican operatives are facing 4 felonies each for fraudulent robocalls for just this kind of manipulation. So would it, could it be a mailer, a robocall, email, a social media ad? This is why the battleground for Facebook with political ads is so significant. Trump being one of their biggest customers. If Zuckerberg says, well, we're not gonna fact check ads from candidates because that's protected political speech, that might just open the door for this kind of manipulation. Really interesting to see, with everybody lining up so strongly now behind Biden. A lot of the gamblers, a lot of the business interests are lining up based on the prediction of a Biden win. But I wouldn't be so sure of that just yet. All right, couple gruesome news stories now, real quick. Insider.com. Supporter at right-wing Patriot rally shot dead after macing a TV security guard at Denver protest. Now, there was one follow-up we saw in the Telegram chat today that the guy was not licensed as a TV security guard in the first place, and there may be legal problems with this. But here's the rundown. A private security guard from a local TV station is in custody after he shot and killed another man during a rival protest by left-wing and right-wing groups in Denver, Colorado. The right-wing Patriot rally was met by a group of counter-protesters who called their rally the BLM Antifa Soup Drive on Saturday. And, this is just, it's cartoonish. I mean, it's Patriots versus BLM Antifa Soup Drive. Like, I'm embarrassed. In the middle of all of this, America has managed to become a grotesque parody of itself. And I don't mean to say that to describe everybody or everything, but what we're seeing with the political dialogue, with these street protests and rallies, and who knows how grassroots versus astroturf they are. It's a significant amount of astroturf and manipulation, of course, media manipulation, and all of this. But man, this is just like, I don't want to go out. And I don't know if this is, if this is me giving in or just me being, safe and realistic, but like, I don't want to go out more than I have to. Like, I don't like this. Like, that this is what America has become. This is the texture of society right now. Maybe in my midlife crisis, I'm indulging my antisocial tendencies, and that's my thing that I get to use Corona as the excuse for. The incident occurred after a protester participating in the Patriot rally sprayed mace at another man who then shot him with a handgun. The shooting was captured on camera by a photojournalist from the Denver Post. Similar story, and this is, I'm bringing you another story as a sort of a disparate data point to connect some dots here to see a bigger picture of a change in the American mentality and general attitude right now. This is from Law and Crime via MSN.com. Nurse who praised Trump's COVID response at Republican National Convention is under arrest for shooting woman during argument. West Virginia nurse who was one of the featured speakers during this year's Republican National Convention was on Thursday reportedly arrested and charged in connection with the shooting, which required another woman to be airlifted to a hospital for surgery, according to reports from several local news outlets. Amy Johnson Ford, 39, also known as Amy Jolene Thorne and Amy Johnson, the reports say was detained by officers with the Williamson Police Department and charged with malicious wounding in the shooting of John DeWitt. As Williamson Police Chief Grady Dotson told ABC, through the investigation, we came to find out that two females got into a verbal argument, turning into one of the females getting a gun. She did shoot the victim one time in the abdomen area. Wow. So, you don't, like, this is a registered nurse. Let's see, a registered nurse early this year, Johnson made national headlines after she left her family to travel to New York City to assist healthcare workers. At the height of the COVID-19 coronavirus outbreak, she spent nearly a month helping treat patients, making a video about the experience, which later went viral. Then was later invited to speak at the White House's Hard Work, Heroism, and Hope event. Anyway, so, we cover stories with some of the surveys and paranoid. So, excuse me, CJ, we're going to skip ahead one, and then we'll go to the comments here. But this studyfinds.org article, hosting during a pandemic, 30% of Americans will take guests' temperature before allowing them in. Now, I think more people are going to say this for a couple reasons. I think the survey is probably biased to make this number. Not that it's dishonest, but that there's an inherent bias in the nature of the survey. But yeah, 30% of Americans will take guests' temperature before allowing them in. New survey shows, the holiday season will be quite different this year, with 4 in 10 people hosting virtual Thanksgiving dinners instead of in-person meals. A new survey of 2,000 Americans finds parties are going to be very different. 30% of respondents plan on setting up a mandatory temperature check at their front door for all guests. And it's just, thinking about, like, yeah, again, you can't avoid this. Even to just, like, you have to be aware that a certain part of the population has been made paranoid by bunk science. There's some question as to the effectiveness of the temperature checks as a screening device anyway. And I'm not going to comment on that. I don't want to cite a study that I haven't read, but I remember seeing some mention of this. But this is just one measure of where we are right now. All right, let's get Jim back up here on stage. Jim, I hope we got some more comments from the audience. I know my mouth's a little dry this morning. I hope I'm not too slow and inarticulate as a result.
No, you seem like you're doing just fine. Not really much in the way of comments. People are just commenting amongst themselves. Fester Fink chimes in, says, worst part about social distancing is that nobody is ever there to pass the joint anymore. You got to throw the joint 6 feet.
Yeah, right.
That's horrible. Yeah, that's something, huh? Would you think in the past at libertarian meetings like we were at, you think you would see a lot more joints going around? Because that's one thing I just realized I didn't see or smell any of. Is that a thing at libertarian rallies usually, or no?
That's an interesting question, because it was an outdoor rally with a few hundred people. And, it being Libertarian Party, it's, and being Arizona, where, enough people have medical that it's, but, Arizona is still, like, as much as our medical program is well established, and accessible, and as likely as we are to, I think. I mean, have you seen anything about this, Jim? Maybe we can put this as the task for the audience to. Does anybody have any polling on the cannabis referendum that is on the ballot in Arizona this year? Because it failed by like 4 points last cycle. And I think they fixed a couple problems with it that some people objected to, and it should be passed. But despite that, uh, this is kind of a anti-cannabis law and order. At least I have a sense of like Arizona is not the place, even if you're a medical patient, that you just like hang out and pass joints around an open park at a political rally. It might have been an actual virus paranoia. It might have been an authority paranoia, right? Like that, hey, we're doing a political rally. They're watching events.
Right.
There's more police attention to go around people who are out when more people overall are staying home. And did you see any police there?
I didn't, actually.
I didn't. I would have expected there might have been one assigned to the event to just be kind of like patrol. I mean, there's definitely an undercover at all of those events. But yeah, I mean, if I was with a group of stoners and I don't know, would we have passed a joint around a parking lot? Or hard to say. But yeah, it's one of those weird things you can't. Yeah, you can't say right now.
Even as Status pointed out here, he's very surprised it started at 420 and not when weed was seen.
Yeah.
Like they started it at 420, so that didn't make anybody think, "Oh, I'm going to bring a joint to that."
I think there was a sort of, if I had to guess, I would say the dominant reason for that would have been a authority paranoia courtesy to Joe in the event.
Right, not wanting to bring a scene to the event. Yeah.
Like, and this is another thing that's shifted in the national mentality right now. And I've been saying this from the beginning. I haven't said it for a while, but I think in at least limited circumstances, it still holds true that police are 5 to 10 times more dangerous than they normally are. Because it's harder to hold them accountable right now, and they have more excuses for arbitrary authority. If they can detain you for not distancing or not wearing a mask, it's kind of scary right now. But yeah, like I wouldn't. That's why I would not have smoked at the event. Is that I would just be afraid that you would have gotten high risk of getting busted.
Yeah.
And then
well, to be fair, if the person sitting next to you passed you a doobie, you would have hit it.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
You just weren't going to bring Saturday. It and possess it. Yeah.
All right, CJ's got it. Is that
That's a disclaimer.
CJ want to weigh in on that?
Kate Nicole smelled it in Philly, she says.
All right.
Good. Well, Philly knows what's up.
Well, isn't Philly, in the city of Philly, it's like full decrim though. I know this because I did smoke down prohibition. I got arrested for smoking pot at a protest in Philly in civil disobedience. I did a week in federal facility there. So yeah, Philly's going to be, it's not a risk there. Like California, Washington, Colorado, the states that are full rec legal, doing it outside is a risk that you'll get a ticket, right? In Arizona, it's a risk that you get arrested. Even if you were a medical patient, you would get arrested for smoking outside of your private residence, right?
I don't know. CJ had the text up there for a minute ago for Prop 207. I guess that's for the weed prop. I don't know. But I haven't read the details on that to see if it's actual full decriminalization or.
Yeah, I don't actually know
what we have.
I just know it's rec and it's likely to pass, and I haven't looked into it yet. I don't know. I don't know the exact mechanics of it. But yeah,
So
if someone,
if it passes, say in November, they're like, okay, yeah, that passed. How long would it take effect? When does it go
yeah,
into effect?
that's well, in terms of enforcement, I think it goes into effect
Immediately.
immediately in a practical sense, even if it only goes into effect on the books, like say January 1st or beginning of the next fiscal year or whatever, arbitrary status deadline or calendar date they would pick for that. But I can't imagine that. I mean, cops are going to have a hard time busting you with a straight face in that in between time when the state just voted for legalization and it just hasn't taken effect yet. You know what I mean? I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
think. Yeah. So, what can you read that? What does it say?
Smoking in a public place would be a petty offense. But it's still an
Right.
offense. See, that's what pisses me off. It's like they still have the caveat to be able to walk up to you and get in your shit. Give me your ID. Prove to me that you're, you know,
Yeah, but you can have it
or
on you. You can travel with it safely. You can smoke in your car, in your home, or in friends' homes, in private places. Like I mean, I don't like that that's a government policy. I don't like the enforcement, but I don't think that and like there's some places that do that with cigarettes. There's some places that are just where the government is just like, yeah, we're just going to set the standard. This is what people generally want, and it's there's certain cities where you can't smoke on the street, you can't smoke tobacco, you get a ticket, right? There's like designated smoking areas, and um, I think that's kind of silly. Like, I don't think it's worth making a policy about. I think you can just say, hey, don't be a dick and smoke, blow smoke in people's faces. Like, yeah, don't smoke in the middle of a crowd. Don't walk up to someone, stand next to someone and smoke a cigarette. Like, you don't need, but if certain communities wanted to set that policy and say, like, in our private community or in our city or what, like you think of, the ideal voluntary society of localized governments, there might be some that do that. So I don't really have a problem with that. Because they're not going to like, and then it's a petty offense. Most cops aren't going. Well, I don't know. Remember we found out when we did our cannabis panel a couple months ago that despite the legalization steps with medical and rec in so many states so far, nationally cannabis arrests went up over the last 3 years that we have data for, with it 16, 17, 18. And that's kind of scary. But I don't think they're going to be, I mean, I wouldn't, I'm not gonna complain that I can't smoke cannabis in public if my right to do whatever I want with it in private property is respected, and I'm safe to travel with it. I think that's a reasonable reflection of the paradigm. Wow, man, am I like apologizing for government too much today? What the
I'm
hell?
just
This
gonna
is weird.
say I'm gonna use my freedom to still complain. You cannot complain if you want to, but I'm still gonna complain that I get fucked with for smoking a joint walking down the sidewalk all by myself. That pisses me
Yeah, well, so do it where a cop doesn't notice, and if you're really all by yourself, you're probably going to get left alone. Like, that's my point, is that it's kind of a dumb thing to criminalize, because it gives the police an option to get someone to stop if they are being a dick. And see, that's the thing, is like our in some ways there's so many uh zombie Americans and personality disordered Americans and ADHD Americans, and who just drunk assholes, who might smoke blow a hit of a cigarette in your face, and be dicks about it and not be willing to stop. And if you're a business owner and someone is not cooperating like that, I don't know. You see where I'm going with that? they're not going to harass you for walking down the street smoking a joint if there aren't any cops around, and they're not going to actively pursue and investigate and hunt people down for, you know, a citation offense of consuming cannabis in public. Anyway.
Yeah, they want you to feel nice and comfortable and do what you do, and then when they feel like it at the time of their choosing, they'll come fucking ruin your life. Ruin your day. Ruin your day at least, but in most cases ruin your fucking year or your life.
Hey,
Well,
gentlemen,
Who you are also.
It's a petty nanny state thing, that's all.
can I add something to this lovely conversation? Because while you guys have been talking about this, I've been putting up little fun things on the screen here. And Arizona government actually advertises to the public that if you've used cannabis before and under a certain amount of times and under so many certain circumstances, you could be a cop. Good job, Arizona.
Wait, so they're
You're
saying
allowed.
don't smoke pot, so you're still eligible to be a cop?
No, they're saying that even if you've used cannabis before, as long as you've only used it a certain amount of times and within the X amount of time prescribed, that you can be a cop still. So do you see the connection I'm making here?
They're being more. They have to be more inclusive now.
Yeah, because they're putting and by the way, your Prop 207 is just a laundry list of how government controls cannabis.
And taxes it.
Yeah, so if you
Yeah,
vote yes
it's
on
not-
it, you're just consenting to them treating you the way they're like, you can only carry X amount here and there, and if you are over here but not over there, you can have this and that, and these are who can use it, and this is who can grow it, and yeah, it's just a laundry list of who controls.
I think I get what Adam's saying though. He's like, obviously he's still aware and against all of those aspects of it.
Yeah, of course.
But he's just trying to point out that it's at least one step closer to not having to worry about it.
You mean the masses are gonna whip us a little less, sir?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
No, I just-
Silver
Excellent.
lining.
in terms of the process that we see unfolding for cannabis decriminalization across the United States, this is just barely technically in the recreational category. Like, I get that first step is always going to be fucked up. It's going to be like, you know, barely from illegal to medical, barely from medical to recreational, and still a long way to full decrim. But I think to your point, CJ, if they're trying to be more inclusive, they're basically recruiting stoner to be cops, and you know, it's like they have to, because for young people, you know, when cannabis is as legal as it is, most people will have tried it by the time they consider joining the police.
Well, you can take a Randy Macho Man Savage amount of steroids, admit it to the recruiter, and they'll just fill out a sheet of paper that gives you a waiver. Congratulations, you're on your way to police academy.
Yeah,
Probably put you in the front of the line.
Yeah. I mean, now if I was a statist and I was looking for a job and I was a cannabis user, I mean, there's limits. You got to have 2 years, no usage. But I mean, at least they're injecting someone who has used it before, so is most likely to not be as violent and aggressive for the low-level petty offenses.
yeah. See, this is where I want to be really optimistic about.
Yeah, like maybe
the magical power of marijuana to mellow everyone out.
I'm just saying that whipping hand a little weaker today, sir.
Yeah, but this is so, like, cannabis is like, you know, there are a lot of, when we look at the existing authoritarian power structure that we all suffer under, you know, trying to find a thread to pull to unravel the sweater, there are a number of sort of pervasive issues that qualify as a potential threat. You know, like money, right? If the dollar collapsed and everybody switched over to crypto or Bitcoin or some digital metal assets, whatever, that would, you know, it would, there are a number of linchpins that you pull and the whole thing falls apart. And I don't want to say that cannabis is like a slow acting one. And it's not because, you know, the people who are first in line at the dispensaries are able to get it. That's not what's going to change the national sort of attitude. Like for me, like I know for me, I use cannabis as as like a continuous adjustment, and I live better as a result. And I think the people who need it aren't going to get it until not only is it fully legal, but it's almost mundane. So that's what I mean. It's slow acting, but you're actually very much encouraging, my optimism here, CJ. Because if all the cops on the street in this next coming generation of cops have smoked pot once or twice, or at least been around it like it wasn't a big deal, I think that's going to have a major positive impact. I think that makes sense.
The hand's getting a little weaker, sir. The masks are going to whip us a little less.
Yeah, yeah. But the whipping hand gets weaker, and eventually we pull the whip out. All right, Jim. Any comments before we do our next chunk of headlines here?
Well, I'll just play the most recent one. Kate Nicole from PA again. You can't have a firearm if you have a medical card in Pennsylvania. Same way here, I believe, right? But you can for any other prescription.
Yeah, there's a great hypocrisy there, obviously, but that's another big thing about rec is that you can possess it and smoke it and not worry about, there being some legal complication with your firearms rights, unless maybe you get caught doing something specifically illegal with it.
So, but if you were on the medical card all this time because that's all that was available and you lost your gun rights because of that, now that it's recreational, you don't get your gun rights back probably.
I don't know. Do you get your gun rights?
Medical patient.
Do you get your gun rights back when your medical cannabis card expires? That'd be an interesting question for an attorney.
That is an interesting question. Yeah, you should ask Mark Victor.
Ask Mark Victor, yeah.
I believe I know you say this is an illegal document, but the statists love the Constitution. So, but somewhere in this book, I think it says you trade one right for another right, and the government says that they can choose which rights you can trade. So you can have this medical right, but we're going to take away your gun. I mean, so we're gonna. So yeah, I think I don't know if that's in this book, but statists will tell you it is. It's somewhere in this book, the Constitution, that says you can trade a right for a right. I think, right? Isn't that what that it says? You can trade a right for a right. Am I being
CJ? You're not a free human being. You're a citizen.
Oh no!
You don't have rights, you have privileges.
Yeah, no, we have liberties too. In this book, it says all the freedoms that I get, and it has a list of rights. And then I think there's a fine print that says the government can make you trade a right for a right. So yeah, if you want your freedom of speech, you might not get a gun. If you want your freedom of religion, they might take your gun. Because they don't want you to have a gun if they don't agree with you. I mean, but again, by the way, just for a clear picture for everybody about this justice that Trump nominated, she's pro red flag law. She's pro taking your guns first and then going to court to get the due process second. She is because you can tell in her language in some of her cases. So all the Trumpophiles that keep telling me that they read this Second Amendment, that it shall not be infringed. Oh, it's been infringed. So I know that you say this is an illegal document, but like I said, this is the one the current, occupying government says we're under. So
yeah, it makes is an infringement on my intelligence.
Yeah.
It makes the whole Supreme Court fight seem like a silly duopoly distraction, right?
Hey, real quick, Adam, are you for packing the Supreme Court?
I don't comment on the most effective policies.
Don't Joe Biden
mafia to carry out its business.
Don't Joe Biden us.
No, I am neither for or against it. It's like if you're saying, the question is, if you're going to stick a knife in my back, should it be a red knife or a blue knife? I'm like, I really don't care. I'm not
Right. But
no,
as
am I
okay,
going to weigh in on that? It's not
okay,
even
hold
worth.
on. Fine. So wait a minute. A libertarian that's not going to weigh in on court packing?
I
I
mean,
think you should
no, no.
know
I mean,
everything as
I'll
a
tell you why.
libertarian,
No, but I'll explain that position
please.
and say that because it's it's not worth analyzing when you recognize that it's just duopoly, distraction, showboating, competing between the two factions of the American Socialist Communist Fascist Party. And you proved it with your point there, or at least raising one of the points that you did about Trump's nominee, that she's pro red flag laws. I'll bet she's pro Federal Reserve too. I'll bet she's pro corporatism too. Shocking, right? I'll bet she's pro government authority overall. Duh. So like, if there's 9 assholes, creating this justification for government, or 15 of them, I really don't care. Like, it makes it, it's just, do you want to, as a libertarian, do you want to, even give that fight any more relevance?
Yeah, I do, because again, they are the ones that are making the rules.
No, they're not.
Yes, they are. They are the ones making the rules. Yes, they are. They are a super class of people that are all in it together. It's like going to Oz and finding out that it's not real. It's all political theater in that aspect. So when you're dealing with a Supreme Court pick that's pro red flag laws, that's okay with trading your constitutional rights for another, or this one supersedes that. This is how we lose due process. It affects our lives by the rules of which the masses want to play, sir.
So
seriously. I mean, I got a different governor. She's got a whip and a high heel, and she is dumber than a box of rocks, and she's got that whip. And so, right. I mean, my point is if she could pack our state Supreme Court with just all Republican justices, there would never be a reason for a libertarian to run in any state. If they're going to make it so that we can't, I mean, you see what I'm saying? There's a bigger point to this.
Hold on, CJ, I think there's an element of this you're missing. So I'm going to challenge you to step back for a second, because you seem to be accepting what government says the role of the Supreme Court is.
No, negative, Ghost Rider. I'm saying that this is what they're saying the playbook is.
Well, that it even is relevant in, as you say, having the function that it does. So how when I look at government, I say, what is the actual purpose of government? Not what does government say its purpose is, but actually analyzing its behaviors and its effects. What is the purpose of government? To keep the super rich getting richer and the rest of us getting relatively poor. So then you go, what is the role of the Supreme Court in serve as a subsidiary organization serving that overall function of government?
They would call themselves a co-equal branch of government.
Well, yeah, and as an arbiter, they hypothetically are, but what is the Supreme Court really? It is a validation. It is the government saying, oh yes, everything that we're doing that we don't say at the Supreme Court level is wrong, is okay, is good and legal. And if the Congress or the federal government get carried away a little bit and the citizens get pissed off, we can present this illusion of being the fair arbiters of the law of the land and of justice. And what that means is that this like the function behind the function is so that government has a way to tap on the brakes every now and then and create the illusion of integrity and being able to question itself. But it's like the police, Well, we investigated ourselves and cleared ourselves of any wrongdoing. That's the purpose of the Supreme Court in serving the role of government. So do I care, like about the mechanism of how many people there are? I mean, I guess the fewer the better, because they're going to spend less money on staff and offices and salary. I guess there. That's my there's the libertarian actual position. And then unpacking the court is that we should unpack it. We should get it down to 3. Like, if it's going to serve this function at all, and just keep the system going as it is, make it as cheap as possible. Right?
I like that.
Right.
3. I like bringing it to 3 judges.
All right. If there are no more burning comments, we're going to get to this last stack of this next pile of headlines. All right. This was from last week. FoxNews.com. California sheriff's deputies say they didn't know it was illegal to lie about evidence on police reports. I got to read this headline again, not just because I flubbed it, but look at how funny this is. Report. Keep it on screen there. California sheriff's deputies say they didn't know it was illegal to lie about evidence on police reports, report from FoxNews.com. The sheriff's department says deputies are repeatedly trained on evidence, chain of custody, and booking of evidence. 2 former Orange County sheriff's deputies told the California grand jury they did not know it was against the law to falsify police documents, an offense that led to their firing and conviction amid a widespread department evidence scandal that came to light last year, according to a local report. Bryce Richmond Simpson, 31, and Joseph Anthony Atkinson Jr., 39, testified to a grand jury on September 21 that they were never told it was illegal to write in police reports that they had submitted evidence when they actually had not. The Orange County Register recently reported, citing transcripts of their testimony, deputies were typically expected to submit evidence by the end of their workdays. The insanity of what the police think they can get away with in this country. Obviously, in this case, they didn't get away with it, but how many departments are they still getting away with stuff like this? Maybe now they'll go, oh crap, we shouldn't do this. But the falsifying of evidence, leading to false convictions, this is, a really, really important story that I think, is going to have some impact on the public view of the police. When you go, they're just going to say they didn't know, they thought, because police, and you think, even in a voluntary society, a private security force would be allowed to lie. They would not be allowed to commit fraud. The thing is, we as libertarians, we make this really important ethical distinction, right? Like violence and force and coercion, these words have specific meaning. You use violence in self-defense and it's legitimate. If you use violence in an act of aggression, that's an ethical violation. If someone's pointing a gun at you and you go, look, an airplane, and there's no airplane, you're committing a fraud to distract them so that you can get away or take the gun out of their hands or whatever it is, right? And similarly, a private security force would be, hypothetically able to lie to defensively or to de-escalate or to prevent harm, right? But what they're talking about here is not that. This is a whole other level of fraud. And I think on the scale of the story that we covered, I think this came out like 10 years ago, that it was revealed there were a number of police departments who were actively prosecuting people for cannabis and collecting cannabis as evidence and testing it while they had rape kits piled up that weren't getting tested. And we did a video on that for Adam versus the Man that did very well, pointing out that cops would rather bust you for bust pot smokers than rapists. Like that's the reality of the police state. All right, so we got a few fun round the world coronavirus update stories, as I mentioned before. CNN.com, Singapore will pay citizens to have a baby during the pandemic. Singapore will offer a one-time payment to aspiring parents during the coronavirus pandemic. The country's deputy prime minister said the incentive would help reassure people who face financial pressure and are worried about their jobs. As Heng Swee Keat, I doubt that's how you pronounce it, told lawmakers on Monday, we've received feedback that COVID-19 has caused some aspiring parents to postpone their parenthood plans. This is fully understandable, especially when they face uncertainty with their income. And there are all sorts of ways that having children is subsidized by governments all over the world. In the United States, hey, free daycare and education, all sorts of other tax breaks and benefits and things like that incentivize having kids. One of the funny things that I just watched the last week tonight, John Oliver's review of China's one-child policy, and I was just thinking about that in regards to this story, where, as he kept saying, you can't just dial down human biology and all the problems. If you don't know, if you're not familiar, like John Oliver's video on on China's one-child policy is a pretty solid introduction to the subject. If you don't know, like, look it up. The disparity of males to females, because males are considered more desirable as children than females. And it has created some serious gender imbalances in a lot of places. And the implementation of this policy has just been a disaster. So this kind of social engineering, I think there's a natural tendency, like, when you get married, people give you gifts, and you have a baby, you have a baby shower, and there's a natural way that this is encouraged. But when it's done at the national level or social engineering level, you're going to see interesting unintended consequences. It's going to be really fun to be tracking some of the long-term statistics that come out of the coronaphobia crisis, and a lot of them are going to be grim. A lot of them are going to be suicides and overdoses and assault and shootings and things like that. But some are just going to be, sort of fun, quirky. How many people just put off having a kid this year? Is there, like, you imagine? Here's a prediction. There is going to be a significantly noticeable drop in births globally as a result of coronavirus. And I shouldn't say that. Not as a result of the virus, as a result of the economic hardship that government has used it as the excuse to impose. You are going to be able to, in some places at least, I don't want to predict how widespread, but you're going to have, you're the corona grade. That, this year fit the corona gap. The people who are born are going to be a noticeably smaller school year group, and it's going to actually affect educational institutions to a certain degree. There are going to be a lot of just really interesting things to follow like that. Not as interesting from England. We have our next story from the Associated Press. England to have 3-tier lockdown system amid tipping point. And I want to try to figure this out, and it's really just more, British socialism, government nanny state, weird policy. I'll just read the story. See if you see what I see here. Millions of people in northern England are anxiously waiting to hear how much further virus restrictions will be tightened in coming days, as the British government confirmed Sunday that it will be introducing a new system for local lockdowns. Because you got to have a system. You can't just order people to do stuff. Your government, you got to make it look official. You got to have a catchy title for it. In response to the virus's resurgence, Prime Minister Boris Johnson is expected to announce in Parliament on Monday a 3-tier local lockdown system, formerly known as local COVID alert levels for England, his office said. Under the new system, the country will be placed into medium, high, and very high alert levels. Johnson's office said the government is working with local leaders to decide which areas are covered by the very high alert level and the appropriate interventions in those areas. Am I dating myself citing V for Vendetta? And it's funny, I said that I look at America right now and go, yeah, we've become kind of a grotesque caricature of ourselves. It's true around the world, but the story, if you don't, by the way, if you have, like, as a libertarian, we used to cite the Matrix a lot, and I think we've kind of grown out of that generationally. Like, I still use the Matrix, and I have to remind myself that kids these days, a lot of them don't really get that reference. I don't know how classic of a movie is the Matrix that people go back and watch, that enough people have seen it even in the younger generations. I hope a lot, because it's a very revealing movie. But also V for Vendetta is one of these sort of like libertarian dystopian classics that I hope people watch as long as it's relevant. And in V for Vendetta, they show this in a very brief montage, sort of flashback, backstory explanation in the movie, that a big part of the closing of society that you saw at the beginning of the timeline of the movie, it started with a virus. I don't remember if it was started, but a virus, and the one company that had the vaccine and the people who profited off it. That was a big deal, and a big part of the backstory here. Bernie Hancock pointed this out to me, and I was like, oh yeah, oh shit, I remember that part of the story, huh? Should we be that afraid? I again, just to reference back to my opening monologue today, if the possibility, again, like I maintaining my faith in long-term human progress, going, a bit of the way of V for Vendetta world, we might be going down that road. I don't think it's going to be that bad. I think the scenario presented in V for Vendetta represents a kind of worst case scenario, and I don't think that's a realistic one for the United States. Maybe for England, who knows? They're a little more statist over there. Surprise, surprise. So, next headline for our global COVID roundup, BBC.com. COVID-19, China's Qingdao to test 9 million in 5 days. The Chinese city of Qingdao is testing its entire population of 9 million people for COVID over a period of 5 days. The mass testing comes after the discovery of a dozen cases linked to a hospital treating coronavirus patients arriving from abroad. So just I'm sure there's some other manipulation here. This is like, reminds me of the story. Again, they got us banned. What was it now? Like a month ago, the first week-long ban on YouTube, talking about Boris Johnson's attempt to get all of England tested. Excuse me. I'm sure we'll have a follow-up on that soon. There are going to be other places doing this, and a big part of this is just to make work spend money for our corporate sponsors. This is a tax ripoff. This is theft. This is a giant fraud. Where if you already know that taxation is theft, you go, oh yeah, well duh. Anytime they spend it, it's just like, who are they giving the stolen money to? In this case, it's a new excuse to spend government money. But with these population-wide testing programs, whether it's a national level or a city level, you're going to have other manipulation. And as I pointed out, we're not on YouTube right now. I can say this, CJ. I can say this. That there are false positives, and if you have a test that has false positives, and you say, well, we're going to test an entire population, and we're going to keep some policy in place or keep testing until it gets down to zero, it'll never get to zero. And I don't know how long they're going to be able to sustain this. I think it's such an obvious racket that they're really not going to get away with it for very long. But it is, we will be keeping an eye on both of those stories. NewYorkDailyNews.com, NYDailyNews.com. New York City slaps COVID rule breakers with $150,000 in fines. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, city officials gave out 62 fines totaling $150,000 for violations of COVID-19 rules in hotspots in Brooklyn and Queens over the weekend. I think I misstated it earlier as the total amount of fines issued. This was over the weekend. 5 unnamed religious institutions were among those hit with fines. The crackdown came amid an alarming spike in COVID cases from Borough Park, Brooklyn, to Kew Gardens, Queens, with many of the affected areas home to large Orthodox Jewish populations. Leaders have pleaded with the communities to shy away from large gatherings. Last week, Mayor de Blasio announced fines of up to $15,000 for holding big get-togethers and penalties of up to $1,000 for those who refuse to wear face coverings. Yeah. I wonder how they're going to handle the medical exemptions on that. CNN.com. Next, we have a fun little sports story aside here. NFL encourages players to come out in new PSA for National Coming Out Day. And I've covered the issue of gay NFL players before, and generally taken the position that you'll never see a gay professional football player, or at least, I'm not to be standing by that as a blanket statement, but that there's a huge disincentive because of the service of entertainment and illusion and tribalism that the NFL is promoting, and the image of masculinity that goes along with any competitive sports, but especially one that's intended to mimic warfare. And I'll spare you my rant on rugby versus football, but I just thought it was an interesting thing to take note of. And I obviously, there's going to be a delay in institutions that depend on illusions of masculinity and entertainment to come in line with the general social paradigm accepting of GSM, gender and sexual minorities. So I wonder if it's like, is the NFL desperate for attention? Is the NFL suffering that bad with COVID? I wonder, what is, what's the reason for this? But as CJ just put it on the screen there, they did a 30-second video to celebrate National Coming Out Day with a video that 30-second long National Coming Out Day PSA had 13,500 views, so not that many on YouTube, but they are going to be playing it, or apparently did play it yesterday during early game Fox broadcast Sunday. So it'll be interesting to see if there's any fallout, or if this hurts the NFL brand. I imagine, this is not, if it hurts the NFL brand, it's going to be a very subconscious thing. No football fan goes, well, I watch football because it reinforces my self-concept of masculinity and makes me feel better about my masculine insecurities. And to the sports fans out there, there's a lot of ways we're doing sports wrong and bad or worse than we should because of government and the subsidization of stadiums and so on. A lot of things around sports in the commercialization of them. And if you watch it for entertainment, that's great. But I hope that doesn't prevent you from examining some of these deeper issues that might lead you to find a better way of spending your time. So, business, or rather than watching bread and circuses, right? So, BusinessInsider.com. Most Americans have no idea how deeply embedded white supremacist groups are in the military. White nationalist groups, who are some of the country's most serious terror threats, are finding new members and support in the U.S. military. Those links date to the 90s, but most Americans remain unaware of the connections these groups have to the military. So, of course, most Americans are going to be generally unaware of this because they don't want you to be aware of this. They don't want you to know that there is a significant white nationalist presence in the U.S. military. And it's just as probably a lot more dangerous for Americans. We see that the same thing exists within the U.S. police force. But I just wanted to point this out because I believe Mercedes sent this to the Telegram group, and we'll have the link below if someone wants to get a little more into this. But yeah, if you really want to get a sense of this, do your research. I can just give you one more data point here. In the most recent poll by Military Times, an independent media organization covering the military, about 1/5 of service members have reported seeing signs of white nationalism or racist ideology in the military community. Those include the casual use of racial slurs and anti-Semitic language, and even explosives deliberately arranged in the shape of a swastika. Now, I wouldn't take that number as being sort of all indicative, because in the Marines, and I know that a lot of people came in with their prejudices, but there was, a sense of we all bleed green here. And, that, if you're a white nationalist and you go to Marine Corps boot camp, there are going to be some blacks and Hispanics in your boot camp platoon. And at some point, you're going to have to fireman carry or be fireman carried by someone who's a different color than you. And I know that's a very simplistic example, but there is a lot of, sort of locker room talk of racism, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about actual white nationalists who are organized, who have deliberately infiltrated the military. From newspunch.com, CIA pilot presents evidence that no planes hit towers on 9/11. Ex-CIA and commercial jet pilot John Lear claims that the Twin Towers were not brought to the ground by planes crashing into them on 9/11, and now detailed information has been posted online corroborating his account. Now, this was one of the more out there theories about 9/11 that came out, soon thereafter, that it could have been missiles or holograms or things like that. But again, you have to look at this and at least go, there are some serious holes in the story. And I hate to cover another story and be like, hey, you gotta go do your research, but I'm not going to get all the way down into this rabbit hole today in the last few minutes of the show. But in terms of this development, it is interesting to see that we can rewrite history. We don't, and this is, again, to refer back to my opening monologue, we don't, even if they're dominating the conversation now with their bullshit history, and we can overcome this with time. In Lear's expert opinion, the official claim that two planes crashed in the towers is actually physically impossible. The grandson of Learjet founder Bill Lear, John Lear, is a retired airline captain and former CIA pilot who has flown over 100 different types of plane during 40 years of active flying. He holds more FAA airman certificates than any other FAA certified pilot and has flown secret CIA missions in Asia, Africa, Eastern Europe, and the Middle East. Basically, you don't want to argue with John Lear about flying in planes. He's as close as you can come to being American intelligence and aerospace aristocracy. So we are supposed to believe that both planes were entirely inside the towers with no pieces showing. A Boeing 767 is 156 feet wide and 159 feet long. The distance from the outer perimeter of the North Tower at the alleged point of contact by American Airlines Flight 11 to the central 47 massive inner core beams that are cross-braced is 60 feet. The distance from the outer surface of the South Tower at the alleged point of contact, blah, 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 same thing, 37 feet. So, oh wait, this is old. Why did someone send us this today? I apologize. This is from 2016. I didn't cover this story, so it seemed new to me. I missed the date. But apparently there was new evidence that came out at that point in a new analysis that is, and my general take on this about 9/11, and I hope you caught our interview with Richard Gage, Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, last week or week before. It's enough for me to be, somewhat agnostic, because there's so many, so many things you can get wrong, so many rabbit holes to get lost in about 9/11. it's enough to know that the government story is bullshit and it's being used to manipulate you to support the military and the global war on terror. So if you want to get into that, that link from the 2016 story will be in the show notes today. All right, fun news. I'm going to check the link on the date on this one. Okay, yeah, this is September 30, 2020 from Forbes.com. For the first time, scientists successfully extract DNA from insects embedded in tree resin. Yes, somewhere in South America, a miner finds a piece of amber inside the hardened tree resin. He notes what seems to be a mosquito. Using advanced equipment, scientists extract the last meal of the blood-sucking insect. Thanks to the genetic code perfectly preserved in the still intact blood cells, the scientists then clone a dinosaur. The novel and later successful movie franchise Jurassic Park popularized the idea that amber could preserve soft tissue and even DNA molecules over millions of years. But real attempts to extract DNA from amber or similar substances were unsuccessful to this day, and resin-embedded samples were deemed unsuitable for genetic examinations. Unlike in the movies, fossil tree resin is not a good choice to preserve DNA, a fragile molecule carrying genetic instructions for the development, functioning, growth, and reproduction of all known organisms. So anyway, cutting edge. The study concluded that although it was very fragile, DNA was still preserved in the samples. So anyway, if you want to get into science, fun stuff there. Cutting edge of manipulating the genome. All right, one last story I got to cover. Excuse me. Look at me doing it properly, coughing into the elbow, even though there's no one around me. All right, so my old friend Christopher Cantwell, the crying Nazi, and yes, to give the disclaimer, I do not support his turn away from libertarianism in the slightest. I think his inclination to white nationalism is disgusting and intellectually wrong. Somehow we've managed to stay friends at first, and I still do respect that even, in the kind of, there's so much I don't respect about what he has done, since he was, a libertarian, since he abandoned libertarian ethics, in favor of white nationalism. But I cannot help but respect his intellect and his persistence and his commitment to what he believes in. And so I guess at least on that basis, we have stayed sort of distant friends, respected, mutually respectful colleagues. I debated him once in Florida early in his turn away from libertarianism, where he was more just a sort of Hoppian libertarian, helicopter rides and all that. But he's gotten a lot worse over the years, and of course was infamously involved with the Unite the Right rally, where he ended up pepper spraying some people and facing criminal charges for it. But now he's getting prosecuted for something much dumber. Yahoo.com has a story from the AP. Jury finds white nationalist guilty of rape threat. A self-proclaimed white nationalist who rose to prominence during a deadly 2017 rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, that was the Unite the Right, was found guilty Monday by a federal jury of threatening to rape the wife of a man who was part of a racist group he felt was harassing and bullying him. Christopher Cantwell, a 39-year-old New Hampshire resident and radio host, was found guilty of extortion and threatening to injure property or reputation, but not guilty of cyberstalking related to a series of threats he made toward a Missouri man over the Telegram messaging app. The jury deliberated for a few hours following the 4-day trial. Cantwell faces up to 22 years in prison and will be sentenced January 4th. He will remain in Stratford County Jail. Now, this is Assistant U.S. Attorney John Davis said after the verdict, "We're pleased that justice has been done and we're glad to have been vindicated, hoping that there would be a deterrent value in everyone on the internet and the white nationalist world and other worlds where really abhorrent things are said. You do have a right to free speech and there is a First Amendment, but when you violate the regulate norms that apply," I guess regulate regulation norms that apply. I don't know. You can't threaten someone as part of an extortion attempt. It isn't going to matter even if it is in the white nationalist internet world. Now, the actual quote, "You will lose everything you have if you don't," he was trying to get information about a leader of the Bull Patrol, the group's name inspired by the haircut of Dylan Roof, who was sentenced to death for fatally shooting 9 black church members during a Bible study session in Charleston, South Carolina. So it's just like stepping back, there's a dispute between Christopher Cantwell, who, like, these guys, the Bull Patrol, make him look reasonable by comparison. They're fucking celebrating with the name of their group and online identity, the Bull Patrol. So there was, there's a whole other, backstory of drama and, people trying to dox each other and things like that. So Cantwell's attorney, Eric Wolpin, on Friday acknowledged in his closing remarks that his client's language was obscene and over the top, but he said it never rose to the level of an actual threat, nor was it tied to anything of value. And here, I tend to agree with him. And the actual language, let's see, maybe it's not in this story. He portrayed Cantwell as angry over harassment and bullying from the Bull Patrol members, disrupted his radio show for months with pranks, and defaced his website with pornography and violent content. Wow. And so, he just wanted to find out who one of the people behind this harassment was. So another story on this, NBC News, crying Nazi, Christopher Cantwell found guilty of extortion and rape threat case. Now, the thing about the rape threat, I actually think this is a bad twisting of the language, a misrepresentation of his language. And I don't mean to defend this. It's disgusting, but if you're being bullied and you're trying to defend yourself, as Cantwell apparently was, one of the messages was, quote, "So if you don't want me to come and fuck your wife in front of your kids, then you should make yourself scarce. Give me Vic, it's your only out," as in give me the identity of this guy. Now, this is a pretty, this threat could be interpreted a couple different ways, right? If you want to be really generous to Cantwell, he's saying, "I'm so gosh darn seductive that I am going to come to your house and be able to copulate with your wife, and she will be so taken with me that she won't notice that we're doing it in front of the kids." So he said, does it imply rape? Yeah, you could just as well go with that interpretation and say, he's saying, yes, I'm going to physically assault and rape your wife and force your kids to watch. That's also a very reasonable interpretation of what he's saying. But I think as long as it's ambiguous, at least under the current government legal standards, they really shouldn't be prosecuting him for this. This is some prosecutor trying to make a name for himself. Oh, I got the crying Nazi put away. Well, what did you get him for? For online threats. And it's like, you really just went after someone because his speech was unpopular. I really think that's what's happening here. And I say this, Cantwell was involved with the Unite the Right rally where they were chanting, "Jews will not replace us," carrying tiki torches. Yeah, that one. I say this as a Jewish guy. Half Jewish, half German, genetically programmed to be racist and hate myself. Somehow came out the other end. But with this thing with Cantwell, it really would be a shame. It really is. I mean, even if there is a transgression here, and you want to say that for making a threat, for causing anxiety, that in a free society, he would be held accountable, that he would face some sanction for this. In the scope of all of the injustices in the world, Christopher Cantwell talking shit with people who somehow make him look like the good guy by comparison, this is not a good use of taxpayer dollars. This is in and of itself a horrific miscarriage of justice. And I have just one more story to tack on here related to this from the Jerusalem Post. Neo-Nazi Nordic resistance movement targets Jews on Yom Kippur. This year, the modern-day successors of the Nazis, known as the Nordic resistance movement, have mounted a violent, vicious campaign of hate against Jews in Northern Europe. And there's a reason this is happening. There's a backlash effect to globalization, to modern bureaucratic governments pretending to be conservative or half conservative and half liberal when they're really just completely socialist, fascist, communist, even here in the United States, right? So if you want to combat this, and I say this again as someone who is, at least in profile, pretty visibly Jewish, and open about that part of my genetic and cultural heritage. I do, and on the record, and I've experienced a certain amount of harassment for this, and I'm not worried about it. I'm not saying this to complain. But when I waded into the BLM and race issues around it just a little bit, at one point, I got, for calling out racism, for calling out that there is a clear element of racism among people who oppose BLM. I'm not saying that that's everybody, but I was swamped with anti-Semitic hate messages on Twitter and mentions and some pretty horrific stuff. But you don't fight fire with fire. You fight fire with water. You don't fight bad ideas with violence, but with reason and logic and love and compassion. And so that's at least one of the reasons that, I stay at least, in some distant contact with my old friend, former libertarian, who seems to have gone down a dark and hateful road, Christopher Cantwell, with hope that in some way the people he has led astray can be led back. And I fear that if he is facing up to 22 years, odds are that's a maximum sentence kind of number. He would, even if he got sentenced to that, end up doing a significantly less time. But if he gets sentenced, to anything more than a few years, they will have made a martyr out of him for the American white nationalist movement. And I fear already in this, we see a misguided attempt to fight racism potentially backfiring. All right, let's check in. We're just a little bit over time, less so than normal, but we actually got to all of our links except for the good news. We'll get to that in just a second. Let's bring Jim up here for a quick check-in with the audience, comments, thoughts. I'm glad we finally got to that Cantwell story. Yes. I hope that was fun. I didn't actually give our the rest of our background, but we've spoken at events together when we were both libertarians, and then when I went to jail for the shotgun incident in 2013, he covered for me. He was at that point extremely close to my exact views on all current events, news, political analysis. That it was him and Derek Broze, and I thought he was a little to the right of me. Broze was a little to the left. So together, great fill-in co-hosts. But yeah, it's a crazy story. To see where he's gone ideologically.
Yeah, definitely. I'll say this: my only opinion on it is, I don't think that he deserves to sit in a box for 22 years for typing that on a computer.
Absolutely not.
The internet is full of people saying, "I'll fucking fuck your mom" and blah blah blah.
Like, yeah, way worse shit. He's serious? He's being singled out, right? You can tell.
Obviously, right.
Yeah.
But he's still
yeah. What's that?
But he's still a douchebag.
Yeah. Well, I think he's a lost soul. Well, he's also a douchebag, but more importantly, he is more critically defined or described as a lost soul than a douchebag. Douchebag is a superficial element of the personality that is Christopher Kane. Well, actually, he's made his public persona pretty douchebaggy, but I found that in person he's much more of a gentleman, actually.
Fair enough. Cool. Yeah, we didn't have any comments during that whole Cantwell thing. People must have just had their jaws on their keyboards.
Is that what gets people attention? That I have a weird friendship with the guy who went from libertarian to white nationalist and is now going to jail for this? Like, this is my relevance as a public figure.
Who he is right now. I don't know. Yep.
All right. Well, then, if there's nothing else, you want to hit some promos and mention the Producers Club, and we'll do the good news and put a bow on it.
Word.
So there's patreon.com/Adam versus the man. Join the Producers Club for $10 a month. Be a part of the editorial prep for this show every day in an ongoing conversation by Telegram, which is not just an app that Christopher Cantwell uses to threaten people on the internet. And it's funny they say like on the internet. It's a messaging app. It's like an advanced data and phone based messaging app. It's really just convenient for using for managing groups. Some people actually Cantwell used it for broadcasting. You can create a channel on Telegram and just have anybody can connect to it, and it's a one-way broadcast, and then you can communicate with people like by text message. So, and there is cigarfederation.com. Thank you so much for getting that on screen. CJ, promo code Adam10, all caps, gets you 10% off your order. Don't forget, if you want to get involved with the debates, making more debates happen, make them debate.com. You can find my profile there. Challenge me to a debate or reach out to our debate manager, Mercedes, in Nebraska. So, with all that being said, I don't think we have any other promos or important notes or announcements, except that you got to go to the store at adamversustheman.com to support the show. If my opening monologue and the theme of today's show of, rewriting the narrative, like really that should have been the title for today's episode. But that we can take control. We don't have to let the victors write the history forever. Eventually, the truth will be known and the truth will set us free. And the sooner the better. And for everybody who shares that as part of our mission here with me as passionately as those of us on the core team, thank you so much for being a part of our active, engaged audience and making this show possible. Unicorny1 on Periscope, another awesome show. Thank you. I believe that's Gus. He says worse things than Cantwell does on the internet on a regular basis. All right, to the good news. It was 210 years ago today, the first Oktoberfest was held when Bavarian royalty invited the citizens of Munich to join together in celebration at the marriage of the Crown Prince. By the way, this is from goodnewsnetwork.org, and if you want a little balance to the mainstream media negativity, it's nice to see the progress of humanity and some good news, right? On this day in 1609, the song Three Blind Mice was published by London teenager Thomas Ravenscroft. On this day in 1974, jumping way ahead today, Blondie performed at CBGB's in New York City under the name Blondie for the first time, derived from comments shouted by a passing truck driver. And on this day in 2007, former U.S. Vice President Al Gore was named co-winner of the Nobel Peace Prize along with the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change for their efforts to build up and disseminate greater knowledge about man-made climate change and to lay the foundations to counteract such change, after just releasing his book, Earth in the Balance, and documentary film, An Inconvenient Truth. Not gonna let them just call that good news. On this day in 2012, the Botswana High Court overturned a customary law that prevented women from inheriting the family home, calling it an unacceptable system of male domination that contravened the Constitution, which guarantees equality. That's definitely good news. And that's our show for today. Thank you so much for joining us on Adam versus the Man. Mwah, peace and love, y'all. Choose happiness. Be excellent to each other.